Trucker Dump for October 20th, 2009, Episode 30, The Salad Bar Psycho.
Welcome to Trucker Dump, where you'll get one driver's insights and sometimes humorous views of truck driving and the trucking industry, and pretty much anything else he feels like dumping on you. This podcast is brought to you by AboutTruckDriving.com. Resources to help you understand the world of truck driving through the use of stories and a pathetic attempt at humor.
Hey there folks, Todd McCann here. You may remember from last week that I said this post was stranger than the last. Let's see if you agree. This one is called The Salad Bar Psycho. Okay, readers, I need some help figuring this one out. The evil overlord and I had an even weirder and scarier encounter than my last post. We've come up with a theory, but I'd like to hear your thoughts. And so the story begins. Tired of eating in the truck, the evil overlord had been riding me for a couple of weeks to get her to a Flying J salad bar. At last, I accomplished her request when I pulled into the Salina, Kansas Flying J. We were seated and happily munching away on our salads when the weirdness began. As we humans tend to do, I was scanning the room every now and then as the evil overlord and I chatted. We weren't particularly jovial or loud, nor were we speaking softly or secretively. That's what makes us all so weird. As I glanced around the room, I noticed a table full of hunters and a couple of pregnant waitresses. I had asked them earlier if they were contagious because I really didn't want to get pregnant just yet. Next, my glance passed over a large black man who was rounding the salad bar. When I say glance, I mean glance. Our eyes met for a fraction of a second. My eyes had already moved on when my peripheral vision detected a sudden movement from the guy at the salad bar. When I looked back, he had turned directly toward me and was glaring right into my eyes. He had a mean look on his face. At first I grinned, believing him to be a trucker who was trying to be funny. As he continued to stare at me without a blink, my expression changed to a look of confusion. His stare went on for 10 or 15 seconds. Well, I've got to tell you that I was confused as a hillbilly at a physics convention, so I got up and started to walk towards him to find out what was going on. He immediately took 2 quick steps and got right in my face. I backed off a bit and asked why he was looking at me like that. His only response was, "You got a problem with me?" I said, "No, I don't even know you. Did I do something to offend you?" Then I got the old classic, "You want to take it outside?" Naturally, I declined. Maybe I should explain something about myself real quick. By my very nature, I'm not a confrontational person. I don't much like to argue, and the only fight I've ever been in could hardly be considered a fight at all. It happened when I was in my early 20s when an upstairs neighbor had come downstairs to complain about the noise from our party. He had said a few words, and he and his girlfriend had vanished. The next thing I knew, I was being picked up out of the rocks. Later on that night, a friend told me what happened. I had stepped out of our front door, which just so happened to be right next to a dark corner. Wielding a large electrical cable wrapped in rubber, the neighbor had jumped out and cold-cocked me from behind. I was out cold before I went face down into a pile of sharp rocks. Still unconscious, the guy flipped me over and started punching me in the face. Only after a large friend of mine grabbed the guy's arm and threatened to rip it off did he stop and retreat. A few days later, battered and bruised, I approached the guy and he told me that he was sorry. He said he had been jacked up on coke that night. Although that's hardly an acceptable excuse, I let the matter go, despite the fact that my friends and my brother wanted to beat the guy into a bloody pulp. As I said, I'm non-confrontational. What would whooping this guy solve? Nothing at all. All that to explain to you that I never would have tried to pick a fight with this wacko at the salad bar. Or anyone else for that matter. So, after I declined Mr. Demented's invitation to step outside, I just shook my head and walked back to our table. The evil overlord wanted to know what was going on since she had her back turned to all the action. As I explained to her, he continued to glare at me. About a minute later, he finally turned around and began to fill up a to-go container at the salad bar. Every few seconds, though, he'd look over at me again and shake his head. Finally, he started to walk out of the restaurant, but he wasn't finished yet. As he walked past the table of hunters, he stopped and glared down at them. Not one of them paid him any mind, so after 10 or 15 seconds, he wandered off. Still, he continued to look back at them and shake his head. I have to think that he was lucky that those hunters weren't a bunch of bubbas who might take offense at being glared at. Outside, he continued to turn around and look at the truck stop doors like he was expecting someone to come running out at him. Instead, he made his way towards an older white man who was walking his dog and talking on the phone. I was anticipating more trouble, but instead he walked to the passenger side of an old maroon-colored car. He then said something to the man, to which the guy answered and pointed at another maroon car in the parking lot. The psycho went over and proceeded to get into the front passenger seat. The old man put his dog in the back, got in, and drove off. So what do you think? Sure, the guy was looking for trouble, but why? What was he doing with an older white man and his dog? And why did he walk towards the wrong car with the right color? The evil overlord specializes in making backstories out of people she sees. It's one of her favorite things to do at the mall. She thinks that the black man was clearly off balance, possibly mildly retarded. She also thinks that the older white gentleman must have been his guardian who was taking him somewhere. She also thinks that this guy was a classic example of a guy that loses it and unloads a round of bullets into a crowd. She was ready to hit the deck if he started heading back towards the building. Luckily, that didn't happen. That sounds like a decent explanation to me. Got any theories of your own? I know one thing for sure. With all the weirdness that's been going on lately, I wouldn't be at all surprised if I woke up with my tongue stapled to my lip.
Hey, yo, bud, where do you want this load of feedback?
Well, I guess nobody's really met themselves because nobody really commented much about the Meeting Myself podcast. I did get a few comments, so let's get right to them. First off, the ever-present Pam Court says, I was glad to see a new post go up, and now I'm really glad. Awesome! Well, Pam, thanks. Man, has freight ever picked up. It's a two-edged sword, though. If I have enough time to write a bunch of blogs, I'm not getting very many miles. If I'm scooting down the road all the time, it's a little hard to write. I suppose I could try, but I'm sure that the people I run into the ditch wouldn't appreciate it much. John Doe says, ooh, Doe, like the doughboy. Spelled like the doughboy. He just says, it sounds like he was trying to hit on you. You know, John, I don't really want to hear that theory. And I don't really think so, but you never know. When the evil overlord and I lived in Dallas for 2 years, I was never hit on by one woman, but the guys chased me like I had bathed in male pheromones. I just don't get it. I mean, why am I such a dude magnet? And next up, Mulch says, by the way, man, love that name, Mulch. That's just cool. He says, or she says, I was just doing some surfing on my Google phone during my break at work, and I happened across something I thought was interesting. It linked over to your website, so I hopped over. I can't really find the relevance between your site and the one I came from, but your site is good nonetheless. Well, Mulch, thanks, and come on back accidentally anytime. You know, I would be interested to know what link brought you here. I don't suppose you remember the website, do you? You know, this is one thing that's really bugged me ever since I've had a blog, and ever since I've been on Twitter. People will find you, they'll discover you, and you have no idea how it happened. You know, I have found people on Twitter, and I don't have any idea how I found them. I can't remember. Nobody ever can remember. Someone who's really freaking smart needs to come up with an app that does this for bloggers. And just anybody, even for people on Twitter. If you can come up with an app that does this, that tracks where people come from and how they found you, how they subscribe to your blog, you know, where they click through to do that, how they followed you on Twitter or Facebook or whatever. If you can do that, it's $1 million idea. Just make the stinking app. I'll buy it for sure. And I bet you a bunch of other people would too. Okay, for this next one, I'm going to apologize in advance because I am going to butcher this name. The name is Eloy Lappinga, or something like that. He or she, I don't know, sounds like a woman's name to me. Just says, what a great article. I really enjoy reading these kinds of posts. I look forward to see what others have to say. Well, Eloy, I'm glad you enjoyed the story of meeting myself. That was definitely a weird experience. Stop by anytime, and thanks for leaving a comment. So many people just read and run. It's cool of you to take the time. And lastly, Stuart addresses a subject that probably needs to be addressed, so here he goes. Stuart says, really enjoyed this article. Can I set it up so I can get an email alert whenever you make a new update? Well, Stuart, if you're talking about just subscribing to the blog itself, that's pretty easy. If you just want to get an email alert, the best way to do that is at the end of each post, there is a little box down there that says subscribe. Just type your email address in there, and you are done. For anybody else who wants to subscribe in other ways, put it in some kind of a RSS reader or something like that, there are instructions. Just go to abouttruckdriving.com, go to the navigation bar, and click on subscribe. Not the orange one. Well, you can click on the orange one that says subscribe to RSS. If your browser does everything great like you want it to, then fine, but some browsers don't support that little button in the RSS anymore. So, just go to the regular subscribe button in the navigation bar, and that will give you all kinds of options as to how you can subscribe. Hope that helps. And thanks to everybody who wrote in. Really appreciate it. So what about the rest of you guys? Let's hear all your thoughts and comments, suggestions, questions that you might have, past or present podcasts. Just give me a holler. And here's how you can contact me. Okay, now it's your turn. What do you think was going on here? You can leave a comment by typing salad bar into the handy little search bar over at abouttruckdriving.com, or you can always reach me by firing off an email to truckerdump@gmail.com. Or, if you're a Twitter kind of guy or gal, give me a shout and a follow over there where I'm at Todd McCann. That's 2 D's, 2 C's, and 2 N's. What else? I'm still asking for iTunes reviews, so if you got a few minutes to spare, I'd appreciate it. And if you're not already subscribed to the podcast, you're only a few clicks away. Thanks for listening. So until next time, drive safe, stay out of my way.